Om Shanti, and welcome to the session of Interview with a Raj Yogi. Our topic is pure love. And so to begin, we'll have a little reflection. I ensure my body is seated comfortably. And very easily bring my attention completely into the present moment. Giving myself permission to let go of the activities of the day and come into a quiet, calm, almost nurturing space within the self. One might say a loving space within the self. And almost immediately, I can experience the connection between letting go and loving. The moment I free myself from all thoughts of doingness, of activity, and come into a more quiet, calm, uncluttered space inside. One that feels soothing to the mind. I can see how letting go, becoming internally free, creates space where love and care naturally come, as if love is attracted to places where there is lightness, freedom, peace. Om Shanti. An electromagnetic radiation. I think it might just need a bit of a lowered volume. Thank you. I think so. So welcome to Raj Yoga, Interview with Raj Yogi. And let us know if you have any questions during our session. As usual, you can type into the chat box. We do have this to check any questions or comments you have. So the topic today is pure love. I think it should be okay. Thank you, Judy. I know it is. I think it should be okay now. I just won't move. Maybe I'll just hold it. Yeah. All right. Thank you for your patience. So the topic today is pure love. And we're going to start out nice and strong. Pretend I'm a skeptic.
Mm-hmm.
Pure love, it's a overly used word out there. So perhaps maybe someone coming into this session, it's such a big loaded word. So Raja Yoga, how is this any different?
I think love is a very multifaceted word. Pure, somewhat, but I think love is definitely quite loaded, and there is huge expectations around that word, which even might be why some eventually reject it, because the expectations of love are not fulfilled. And so they become perhaps skeptical. So it's very loaded. We each have our own concept of love, how it should be shown, and what it means. And oddly enough, I think pure is a very useful word to attach to love, to kind of bring us all on the same page. So if we explore the meaning of pure, it might help us to clarify how we're considering love from a spiritual perspective. We very often use the word purity and spirituality interchangeably in Raj Yoga. So we're talking about pure love, we're talking about spiritual love. So if I understand what spiritual means, it's going to help to clarify the experience of love we're talking about.
There seems to be a connection between last week's session. If there were those who joined, it was the power of detachment. And I think it just naturally led to this topic here. Spiritual. There seems to be a connection between what was talked. We spoke about last week about attachment. We have ideas about attachment, and maybe not healthy ideas, or maybe, I guess, misconceptions, maybe different experiences. Obviously, going beyond the words themselves. Why would spirituality have to be something one can understand in terms of what pure love is, what pure even means?
So in Raj Yoga, we get to look at the contrast between what we call physical, which I think we're all quite have a facility with, and spiritual or non-physical. And physical really is everything that the physical eyes or science can detect. And spiritual is the invisible stuff, which we're all very, very familiar with, actually. As you're listening, you're having thoughts, and those thoughts are not physical things, they're not visible things. Science might be able to capture the effect of those thoughts, but not the thoughts themselves. So the realm of spiritual we're all very, very familiar with, but we maybe don't spend time exploring it in a methodical way, which is what Raj Yoga affords. So we get to look at the contrast between physical and spiritual, and the suggestion that perhaps we're more in physical love as opposed to spiritual love. But oddly enough, I think we're seeking spiritual love. That's our perhaps biggest expectation. So, physical love, when we come into physicality, which starts with thinking, I am physical, thinking, I am the body. So, if I was using myself as an example, a physical awareness of myself would be thinking, I am Judy, but that's my name, that I am female, that I am of a certain ethnicity, that I'm a certain physical age connected to the body, that I have certain physical relations, etc. So you can see how that works, that that's who I think I am. And from that perspective and the needs of that physical identity, I start seeking out value and attainment. And that act of seeking out value or attainment that feeds my physical identity is called physical love. So, if I think I'm a gender, an age, whatever the case may be, I'm seeking out attainment that really feeds the value of that. And then if I switch to spiritual, I don't need to actually leave any of those physical things to experience this. It's an internal switch of awareness. I don't think I'm just Judy or this body, but I think I am a internal, imperishable living being, a soul. And I'm currently in this body. My name isn't Judy, it's really just soul or Atma. I'm kind of ageless or eternal. I have a variety. I am not of a particular gender. I'm free of gender. And so there's a complete transformation in how I experience myself, and therefore, what feeds me, the soul, what's an attainment for me, the soul. And we start to notice that when I go into that spiritual sense, things that feed me, physical things don't work. I can't eat a lot of chocolate and feel it's going to, it might give me a temporary hit because the body's getting something and the body's temporary. But what actually feeds me, the soul, are things like purity, peace, benevolence. These feed me. Authenticity feeds me. So, where am I going to get that kind of stuff, right? So, this is why this connection to God enters the question, godly love. But it's a very different source of attainment, and therefore, showing that love is very different as well. It comes from such a deep place, a spiritual place.
When you were sharing that, perhaps maybe the reason why there's skepticism because of maybe our past experiences and not realizing it's physical love.
Mm,
And when you were using the example, how I identify myself as a certain ethnicity, a certain gender,
mm,
certain age, even when you were sharing, I was starting to feel like a sense of limits in
mm,
terms of perhaps maybe even self appreciation,
mm,
limits then in terms of circumstances, or even appreciation of others because of
mm,
these limits of labels. Is that perhaps maybe the reason why then the skepticism comes up because we don't realize these limits are there,
mm.
causing wanting to appreciate and love, if we want to use that word, but it doesn't really go very far.
Yeah, the words we use are conditional and unconditional. And as long as I'm in that physical place, I may not realize it, but I am placing conditions, huge expectations, and feeling the weight of that from others, actually, which creates a lot of heaviness. That I feel that others want me to be a certain way in order for them to feel that they are being loved, they're receiving love from me. So it's called conditional. And then there's unconditional, which is quite, freedom is the only word I can think of. But to really be able to love between souls is unconditional love. It's based on eternal, very, very eternal, again, spiritual feelings, um, deep, deep appreciation of another soul, regardless of what might be presenting on the surface, even the activities, completely unaffected by the activities or anything. They don't even need to like me. But it's just this, in fact, pure love we suggest, because we're talking about the soul. And I think this is the most interesting thing about it. This type of love, spiritual love, it comes because our innate nature is to be very loving, very benevolent, very appreciative, very respectful. That's our innate nature as children of God. So that it requires no conditions. It's just who I am. As long as I'm in the awareness of being a soul in a very authentic way, that nature will be available to me. So it's called spiritual love. But the moment I come into physicality, I cut off that capacity and come into limitations.
When you share that it's innate, it sounds like then we may not even realize that the love that we're, I guess, what we keep thinking about, whether we think it's physical love or just that we just feel so limited or skeptical about love, that love in that sense, in that context, this limited love, then feels like it's a reaction
Mm. Yeah, I mean, really,
versus innate.
yeah. So reaction, of course, suggests it's from the outside in, that certain conditions have been met, and therefore I will express my version of love. Versus when it's from the inside out, regardless of what's going on, there will be this kind of expression. And I remember one of the first things I heard about Brahma Baba, the first student of Raj Yoga, as he started to go on this journey of discovering his true nature as a spiritual being that's really amplified when we are connected to God. It really amplifies our true nature. When he started that journey of discovering, what he realized is real, pure love, a sign of it is that you have equal feelings, very sweet feelings towards every single being, equal. Not just the ones that are blood relations, not just the ones who are close to you, not just the ones who you feel sorry for, not just the ones who are nice to you, but every single being, because it's not a reaction. It's just my nature. Whatever stimuli you put in front of me, I will have a loving response towards, because it's who I am.
Mhm. So that's where that word pure comes from. It's something that's internally generated versus externally.
Yeah, it's I am literally in my pure or authentic state. Therefore, it is pure love. We could easily say pure peace, pure power, any of the virtues. I'm in my true state, my innate state, which is a spiritual state. I can never reach that pure state through physicality.
So basically, if it's internally generated, if I'm feeling it innately, then anybody can come in front of me. Hi, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just kind, regardless,
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
because of what that person is like.
No conditions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Actually, when you were sharing on the flip side, or when you're mentioning about the limited perceptions of self ethnicity, uh, age, gender, and then you were sharing about being a soul. Was the other opposite feeling, this limited, unlimited feeling that there's a sense of self I'm actually feeling. There's a world I'm experiencing that, irregardless of the gender, irregardless of whatever the external things that we measure as value and success, and start to grasp how then this innate sense of value and love actually comes from.
Yeah. It's very tricky actually, because of course we have glimpses of our loving nature. I was laughing this morning while driving. I'm driving the car, and one of these little squirrels, chipmunks, whatever they are, critters, comes flying onto the road. I remember, slowing down, almost braking. I don't, that very loving feeling towards our furry four-legged friends. And
My furry
then,
friend.
yeah, furry friends, so very loving. And then a little bit further in this car, suddenly turns in front of me. And for a moment, there was like, ooh. And I thought, wait a minute, do you have the same loving feelings towards the car
Wasn't in the
as you
car.
did to the squirrel or whatever? So it made me laugh. Um, the other reason we use pure, what creates the conditions is mine. Again, the freedom of when we feel so full and free as spiritual beings. I think we will amaze ourselves in terms of our capacity to accommodate and accept and embrace, really amaze ourselves.
Can you clarify a bit more about when you were mentioning about mind?
Mm. So, part of physicality, what happens when we start to think we're the body and all of these limited awarenesses, we start to attach to things that we feel will make us more valuable, which is a huge part of love.
And like preferences?
Preferences or likings, if you will. We really start to attach them and call them mine. And they're all based on thinking of myself really as this body. So my relatives, my stuff, my work, my car, my time, it goes on and on. And what they do, it's almost as if like, I think of it as like making a muscle rigid and short.
Mm-hmm.
So when a muscle is rigid and short, it has very limited capacity and it's easily hurt or injured. And so suddenly it's like the heart shrinks and it's just towards mine that I might exhibit some caring, but only if my stuff is going the way I want. So desires start to mix in with attachment. And it's literally as if our heart shrinks and actually begins to break. And so when I become free of thinking my this, my that, oddly enough, our heart expands, our capacities to really appreciate expand. It seems counterintuitive, I know, but we can only, the beauty of Raj Yoga is experimentation. I think one of the best examples is really God. He has no stuff. He has he has no Porsche. He has no body. He has no, and what we say an ocean of love, like this free. This being is so free, and therefore the space for love is unlimited.
So you may have to connect the dots a little bit more for someone when they hear to let go of identifying with different things of mind.
Mm.
Seems to be what is that connection, that journey, the how.
Mm. I think as I'm as we're speaking about it, one of the examples that keeps coming into my mind is if even within a life, as you watch a child, it's quite interesting what happens that when they're very young, unless of course they're taught otherwise, so they have an experience, but in general, they're just really, we say, oh, don't talk to strangers because they're just so accepting of everyone. They just go up to strangers, and yes, they're sensitive to vibrations, of course, but they're very, open and chatty. And then I think once we hit the teens and we start to get into what we call cliques or groups, that's when we start to notice this attachment that this is my group, I belong to this. So I have specific feelings to that group, and they're very different from the feelings I have for the larger gathering. And, I think it's just that sense of what makes one feel safe, secure, valuable, predictable, controllable, that, this is my stuff. And the minute that we actually, even I think if we look at just the relationship with ourselves, that we're, to talk about self love, we can be extremely punitive with the self because of the conditions that we place on the self. And this is what Maya is about, is placing conditions. So think about when you discover you've made a mistake and what happens inside, and just how conditional we are, how impure, if you will, we are with ourselves, my mistake, my error, and we just really cut ourselves off from any experience of self-care. And we don't really understand that by just, releasing that sense of my value has just gone down the drain, that mine, that my identity, this very limited concept of my identity, because when we think we're the body, we become very sensitive to certain criteria of what is valuable and not valuable. So, as an example, and I'm so stuck in high school with these thoughts, thinking about it. I went to a high school which had very clear criteria and cliques, and it was kind of interesting to watch that immersion, a little heartbreaking actually. So there were different ethnicities and groups, and you could really see, for example, if you were a person of color, if that's how, in that physical way, there were criteria of what was a good, there was a caste system almost within it. So if you were athletic, then you were a good person of color. If you talked a certain way, if you got bad grades, you're a good person. It was really weird actually. So you become very sensitive to this criteria. It's I'm a mother. Am I a good mother? I work at a company. Am I a valued employee of that company? I mean, there's always this criteria when I have these limited identifications. And when I don't meet that criteria, which is what we call a mistake, when I don't meet that criteria, I'm very unloving to the self. Whereas when I think I'm a soul, I have this innate, this imperishable sense of my value. Regardless, even when I make a mistake, in fact, I'm able to respond to mistakes in a useful way, a loving way, which means a benevolent way. I can learn from them, I can improve, and it's fascinating to watch the sense of value stay constant, not go up and down. This is love, where our sense of value, the value of ourselves or another being, remains constant regardless of the activity, regardless of any physical criteria. That value stays. When I listen to the senior students, it's always very powerful because they'll ask, what is the role of correction in your organization? And what I find amazing is how they have that constant vision of love. And because of it, they're able to give correction or benefit. They can say, you should try doing this. But the love is so, the valuing of the soul. They literally see every soul as a child of God, which is the highest form of regard. It doesn't matter if they're a mass murderer or whatever, they see every soul as a child of God in such a deep way that it literally, there's a power to that love that empowers the soul to benefit or love themselves. So, this spiritual love that's connected to spiritual identity enables me to love myself and really give that love to others, regardless of what they're doing or how they even speak to you.
We may have to continue this next session because there's quite a few thought-provoking questions that have emerged. But just listening to you share, and I know we've heard this, and outside of Raja Yoga, they say, well, you can't really be kind to others if you can't be kind to yourself. You can't be loving to others unless you're loving to yourself. It sounds like soul consciousness, the experience of that has to be very real in this. And practically speaking, what has that been for your experience in terms of being able to have that kind of regard for yourself where it becomes very natural for others?
Mm-hmm.
Because spirituality, that word is quite loaded. Often case times people think it just means to be nice. Without even realizing, it's like, oh, you're spiritual, you gotta have to be a certain way.
Yeah, no, it's very true what you say. Yeah, that I need to be kind, sweet, nice, but I'm not really in what we call an alignment that will make that possible under any condition. In other words, it puts a lot of strain on the self, and I'm sort of contorting myself to be nice or kind. And then we start to say it's almost intellectual, that I'm doing what I should do. But internally, I feel very different. And the funny thing is, we don't fool anybody because others pick up on vibrations much more than they do on. I don't know how many times I've been with a soul, and you can tell that they're trying. I literally want to say, "Look, don't worry about it. Don't worry about trying to be nice to me, because I can see it's a strain. It's a strain for you, and I know you want to, and you are capable, but you can just—it's not working." Like, you can feel their feelings, and you get the averting of the eyes and everything, and your heart goes out. So yeah, if I can't, because what we're saying with pure love is, I'm seeing someone else in a spiritual way. It's impossible, really, to see someone else really in a spiritual way if I'm not in a spiritual state. I can see a point of light in their center of the heart. That's not seeing someone in a spiritual way, because to see someone in a spiritual way is actually to have the feelings.
Right.
So for me to visualize a point of light in the center of your forehead, I might as well just apply a bindi to your forehead, right? Like, I'm not really there. It's a method that can awaken that, remind me, but it's not the thing itself. That those feelings, literally the heart changes, those feelings have to be there, so that I can actually, it's a funny thing, and again, it's close to infants. Their physical eyes are working. They are aware of the physical, presence in front of them, but the feelings are very pure, right? Very sweet, genuinely, authentically, because they're in that spiritual. When we say detach, we mean detach from physicality. We don't mean detach from that whole paradigm. Like, they're really just plugged into the spiritual paradigm. So I need to, this is a high form of self-love, to take myself into that spiritual state. We say detach because I've become so attached to thinking of myself in a physical way. So the reason love is connected to detachment is I'm detaching from that physical paradigm, which automatically will free the spiritual experience that's there. It's not that I need to put it on. It's there. It's just suppressed. So it's freed when I let go of the physical paradigm. The spirituality, which includes that spiritual love, automatically emerges.
So there is this phrase that's often used in Raja Yoga is accumulating a stock. And in this case, in our conversation here, accumulating a stock of pure feelings for yourself. Is that what you mean by, you can look at someone, look at the point on the center of their forehead and not really have those kinds of feelings, but in terms of such real, authentic feelings for yourself, that kind of emerges this capacity because it increasingly becomes natural within you for yourself in different contexts, because you're the one who has to face you constantly more than anybody else that you're looking at. Is that what you mean? That's that
Yeah.
accumulation of something inside.
Yeah, accumulation is such a funny word in Raj Yoga. It always reminds me of when I was learning about color and in print, like a piece of paper. I'm sure everyone's familiar with mixing together, adding together the primary colors. So when you add yellow to blue, you get green. When you add red to blue, you get purple, etc. I'm sure. So it's additive. But in the digital world, it's the opposite. And personally, I could never wrap my head around it, and I still can't. But unfortunately, that's how Raj Yoga is. I can wrap my head around it in Raj Yoga. It's a reductive process. Accumulation comes from letting go. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it's actually quite beautiful, because what it's suggesting is, with other perhaps religious endeavors, there can be the feeling that we are originally bad. And accumulation then sounds like I've got to pour in a lot of goodness, got to keep pouring it in. I'm always fighting against this innate badness or original sin. But Raj Yoga works with a completely different model, which I believe 100, 200% is that we are innately good. And so what I want to do is engage in a process called yoga. Yoga with Supreme Soul. We say yoga with God really melts away that which is not me. So it's a letting go, a reducing, a removing, if you will, of the illusions of what's not me, so that all that's left behind is the real me. So that's a reductive process. I guess those who are chefs will know about making a reduction, but it's a reductive process. So just the essence remains. So that's accumulation. There's so much letting go. It's quite an interesting experiment for you to try, that when you're sitting, and if you can just, we attach very simply, you just say, okay, just for a few minutes, I'm not going to think about work. I'm going to just focus inwards on the point of the self, this natural letting go. Immediately there'll be this flood of peace into your mind. It'll feel like you're downloading or accumulating, and you got it by letting go. It's kind of weird. So this accumulation that is really accelerated in yoga, this removal, but this accumulation that comes through letting go. And it's, again, a very hopeful and beautiful idea that we're innately good. We're innately loving beings. And it's only because there's a lot of stuff suppressing it. So if I can remove the stuff that's suppressing it, so we say detachment and love are connected. I'm letting go of the not me bits. So just the me, the innate qualities of the self remain.
We're running out of time, but just about that piece, it's been more like I'm accumulating the attachment to my real sense of self so that I can let go. So I'm accumulating a lot of letting go.
Exactly. And I think an earlier point you made is really important, because there's a saying that where there is ego, there cannot be love, and where there is love, there cannot be ego. But ego will try as hard as it can to disguise itself as love. And so we can get deceived, right? I'm really loving. The moment you have the thought, I'm a loving person, you should know you're already out there. I'm a loving soul, absolutely. But this kind of show or error, it can be so deceptive, so deceptive. And I think one of the key signs that it's not the real thing, back to our earlier conversation, it will be loving. It will be conditional. So I know that many souls who really, are really perceiving themselves as very loving. And again, we are genuinely loving, but when we try to do it through ego, they often are extremely sensitive, easily hurt, because there's so many conditions. There's so many expectations of the return. And it's very funny. Very loving souls who are coming from ego are extremely intolerant of souls who are not loving in the way they think that love should be presented. They're very intolerant. So it gets conditional. So I need to make sure I'm doing it through the right method, right? We are loving beings. It's kind of sad. It's kind of like saying we are nice, so don't try to be nice. Try to be soul conscious, right? Try to let go of the image of being loving to become truly or pure love, true love. So am I doing it through the right method? Detaching to become loving, moving into that spiritual experience. It's beautiful because there's no expectations. It's selfless.
Sounds like a journey one has to discover.
Experiment with, yeah.
So we will see if we will continue with this topic next week.
Maybe we should see if
provoking.
the listeners want to continue. You'll have to let us know if you want to continue. You're just sleeping through this.
Yeah. So perhaps maybe as we wait for any thoughts to come on the chat box, maybe we can have a little reflection.
Okay. Recently, there was a workshop that started looking first at the body, the breath, or just the way we position the body, what we call posture. And I enjoyed it so much because it created this connection between using the body in a loving or healthy way and letting go. That when we restrict or tighten or hold the body in, unhealthy alignments, then it's not very caring. But if we can release, let go, open, the body comes into its true alignment, and that's a very caring state. So going inside, applying that principle to myself, the first act of love for the self is to remember I am much more than this body or my job or the relationships or the stuff I have. All of that is temporary. It comes and goes. And if I attach love to those things, the love too will come and go. And so, almost as an act of courage, I go deep inside as if I'm unsticking from this body. Begin to focus my sense of self behind the forehead, that I am the one thinking. And there's a bit of relief in that exercise of unsticking, as if a weight is being lifted. So many expectations melting away. When I think I am the body, what fills my mind is what I have to do, what I have to do, what I have to do to be valuable. But when I unstick, just me, the thinker, the being, I get to explore who I am, my state of just being, feeling light, feeling simple, easy, free, calm, a deep sense of contentment. And out of that contentment, kind feelings easily emerge. No expectations, no demands. Where there is that deep contentment of just being, all the sharp edges of the self are smoothed out. Such a sense of being at peace, letting go of the heaviness. And my heart begins to expand. Let others be who they are. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Judy. This is very
I think we need loving
hot.
feelings for the mic.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you for those joining for tonight's session. We'll pass it over you to share about upcoming programs. We'll allow this thing to rest for the evening.
Thank you, Nora. So, we do have a second interview with Raj Yogi every week on Thursdays. We try to focus more on the essentials of Raj Yoga. So, even if you haven't taken the course, it will give you a chance to learn a little bit more about the content of the study. And this coming Thursday, the topic is Purity Part 2. We haven't done Part 2. Maybe it's Part 3. I don't know. Okay, Purity Part 2. Hopefully, you're keeping track. And we have drop in meditation. Those are very loving moments to experiment with letting go, exploring spirituality. So those are Tuesdays and Thursdays, 45 minutes, 6:45 to 7:30, and Sundays an hour, 6:30 to 7:30. And of course, Saturday afternoons on the Zoom platform, there is Inner Fitness from 2 to 3. And I think Focus is coming up this Sunday. Oh, and this Saturday. This Sunday is World Meditation Hour. So Experience will have a focus on contributing thoughts of peace to the world in itself. I also want to mention that we have the Raj Yoga experience. This is an introduction to Raj Yoga through more experience. And that will be 4 sessions, each roughly an hour, Zoom platform, Saturdays and Sundays, 17th, 18th, 24th, and 25th, from 12 to 1 o'clock ish, might go a little over. So all of that's on the website. We also have it in Gujarati this month, next month in Hindi. So please feel free to explore the website. It gives all the details, and we look forward to you joining whatever sessions you can. We try to archive on our YouTube channel as many as we can. Om Shanti.